Hi, this is part 2 of my video series on using pivot tables to create a better gradebook and to create mail-merged progress reports for students. In the last video, I showed you why you might want to use a pivot table to get extra information incorporated into your gradebook, how to use that to create a mail merge, but it's missing some key features if you want this to be useful. In particular, I have the same data that I used in the last video. I haven't converted it to a table yet. We're going to start kind of from scratch. And the issue is if I have this name column, my default would be to use the student's last name here. But if I have a class of even 20 students, there's a decent probability that I have 2 students with the same last name. I have to have some way of disambiguating that difference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can create a course roster that has information of first name, last name, whatever the key is that you want to enter in the left column, because I don't want to have to type their full name each time either. That'd take longer. I want a key that lets me type in a few characters, and then Excel will auto-complete it and I can move on. It's also going to be a place I store the email address so that I can later connect the roster with the gradebook and then turn that into progress reports like last time, except for now I will have the ability to email them out to students. Let's get started. The first thing I had to do is turn my ledger into a table. I do that by clicking Insert Table. And I'm going to go a step further, and in this top left, I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call this my ledger. The next step is I need to create my roster. So in my roster, I probably want to have some kind of key. This is the unique key that I'm going to put in that first column of the other spreadsheet. I need to have a first name, a last name, and an email address. That's all the information I need to have, but just like the ledger, you could put as many columns in here as you want because that just gives you more information that you can pull out. And the scenario I'm going to have here is I'm going to have 2 people or 2 students with the last name Red. I'll call this Red1 at email.com. I have Red2. That'll be 2 Red with Red2 at email.com. And then the other ones, let me just double check what their names are. I had Green and Yellow. Well, since Green is a unique last name, and Yellow I will also have as a unique last name, I didn't have to put a number on them. So you can still just use a student's last name in any case when there's no ambiguity about who that student refers to. So I'll highlight this, turn it into a table with Insert Table, and I'm going to call this my roster. Oops, sorry, I'm going to call it my roster up here. Table name, highlight that, call it a roster. That name already exists. Oh, I made a little mistake. Just like the first table, I'm going to give this one a name. I'm going to change its name up here to roster. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my first sheet and fix my data so that its names in the first column match my keys here. So this one we'll call that Red1, Blue. Oh, I missed Blue over here. Let me add a student, Blue, C, Blue at email.com. Green, Yellow. We'll say this one is Red2, Red1, Green, Yellow. So now all of the names in my first column correspond to the keys in my roster. And then when I do this merge, I will find a way of making all of this information appear in the final report. All right. The next step, as before, is to take this ledger and turn it into a pivot table. So I'm going to do Insert Pivot Table. I'm taking the table and range with the ledger, putting it in a new worksheet. And just as before, it gives me a blank table to work with, and I want to pull all the information in that I want. But a lot of that information is not from the ledger, it's from the roster. So I need to click More Tables over here. And it's going to ask me to create a new pivot table. Click Yes. And immediately it's now pulling from both the ledger and the roster. And what I want to do is I want to put my first name, I think this is last name, and email over here. And I want to put objectives across the top and sum of scores just like we did before. And now it's saying that it's trying to figure out exactly how the information in these 2 tables is related, so we have to tell it how to do that. So I go to Create, and you have 4 boxes to fill in. You want to choose your initial table, your ledger, in the first slot, and the column you're trying to line up is the name column of the ledger. So I'll go name for the ledger, and the related table is the roster. And so I choose roster in the second slot, and the primary key, the related column, is key. Once I click OK, we now have all that information linked. The display of this is not the nicest, so I'm going to show you how you can make it a little bit more collapsed and a little bit nicer to look at. To do that, I'm going to go over to Design and click on the report layout. I want to show this in tabular form, and then I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to right-click this first cell in the pivot table, go all the way down to Pivot Table Options, and the thing I want to change is under Display, and I want to hide that Show Expand / Collapse buttons. That's going to get rid of these minus signs next to the first name and the name. So uncheck that, click OK, and now we have a gradebook with a little bit more information in it. I have a student's first name, last name, email address, and just as before, I have all of their information here. The grading system I'm still modeling in this example is if you're just trying to sum up the number of times a student has passed a standard. In an upcoming video, I'm going to show you how you can modify that to track the highest score achieved so far, or to keep track of exactly how many of a multi-tiered system. Let's say that you have an EMRN system. I'll show you how you can track exactly how many E's, how many M's, how many R's, and how many N's a student has achieved, and how to make that information displayed right here. But for now, we're just counting the number of passes. And you can see that I now have 2 entries for the last name read. Before I just had 1, but since this is now representing 2 different students with the last name read, that gets split up. I want to now take this to a mail merge that lets me send out an emailed progress report. So what I'm going to do is, just like last time, let me zoom in a little bit, I'm going to highlight the information that I want to send over to Word. So I want to ignore the first column of my pivot table and only get the top column. So I want to ignore the first row of the pivot table. I want to highlight the row that has the headings that I want, and then I want to go down to the last student that I want and give it a name. That's under Formulas, Define Name. I'll call this Merge Data, just as I did in the earlier video. And now I'm ready to open up Word and create a mail merge. So I'm going to do Mailings, select Recipients, use an existing list. My file is pivot2 in this case. And right there I have merge data right at the top. And I'll do a little bit more. I'll say Dear First, and then name is the last name. I need to change that. So it's not just name, but I can say the progress is for derivatives. Derivative score would be derivatives. The value of their limit score is in the column for limits, and their total score is in the column for grand total. Now what you want to do is you want to send this out by an email. I'm going to send email messages, and I'll call this progress report, and I'll usually put something like week 1 or whatever it is there. And under the To title, it's probably going to auto-detect it to be email, but it's going to say, well, what email addresses do you want to send it? Click email, and if I click OK now, it's going to send these progress reports by email to each of those 5 students. Now the email addresses I used are bogus, so I would just get a bunch of errors when they bounce back saying that I can't deliver these emails. But at this point, you now have the ability of sending out a detailed progress report that has all the information on it that you want to each student. And once you have this document saved as a mail merge, it's just a one-click process to email everything. Kind of cool. I'll come back with future videos that have how to update the grading system, how to incorporate other information into this report, and how to do some fancy formatting things with this report that allow you to change, say, these numbers to correspond to the number of check marks that they've earned, for example. That's it for now. Thank you.